Welcome back to the Alliance Goal Digger podcast. Today we are logging time with a dear friend of the Alliance team, Julie Strickland. Julie serves as a peer counselor during our Amputee clinic rotations. Julie has counseled numerous patients and has helped host numerous support groups. She has lived the journey from patient to peer. She is someone who has turned her personal experiences with limb loss into a powerful mission to support and uplift others in the amputee community. Plus, she has 2 sons. Boy moms unite. Julie, thank you so much for joining us today.
Thanks for having me.
I wanted to start with you telling your story. I think one thing that I've always admired about you, Julie, is you take life and just make it your own. You don't just receive what's been given to you. You respond in a way that you ensure you're taking hold of every day with courage and bravery.
Okay, so my story is one day I decided to skip going to the gym and go ride the motorcycle. I worked with a personal trainer. It cost me $20 to skip out on him. And on the motorcycle, we were hit by a truck. So lost my $20 and my leg that day.
Yeah, I can't imagine. So tell me, how old were you? Kind of where were you in your life, and who were you riding with?
So I was riding with my husband. I was 40 and our sons were 19 and 18. So I had one who had just finished his first year of college and one who had graduated from high school about 15 days before our accident.
Oh, wow, Julie. We obviously didn't know each other at the time, but you lost your leg. And do you mind describing kind of where your accident was, the results of it, and then how you got connected to a prosthetic company?
Sure. So our accident was in Good Hope, Georgia, which has one stop sign. That's it. It was out in the middle of nowhere. My husband at the time had a sugar drop. We had just stopped and had crackers and juice. It was just a freak accident. He lost consciousness and went into ongoing traffic. Along with losing the leg, there were multiple other injuries that I had to overcome. Did that, and here I am today.
And so how did you decide you wanted to walk, let alone, I know you were an avid runner early on in Jason's career. He actually worked with Julie, and I became friends with her because I had lost a brother. And I told you how I was dealing with my grief as I was training for a marathon. And you taught me about the walk run. And you said, hey, if you do a 10-minute mile, you can do 8 and 2. And you broke it down for me. And I remember that. And that's how I ran my first marathon.
That's how I ran my first one too. So, yeah, it never entered my mind that I would not walk again. Although I will tell you that many, many people told me I would not, from medical people to my insurance company to everything else, because of the injuries to my pelvis and back and all of that. But I also knew from training what hard work was, and I knew what I could do and how hard I can work. So I never thought that I wouldn't do it, but I will say that I thought it would be much easier than it was.
So from the accident to kind of getting back up and walking and then eventually running, could you go ahead and go through a timeline of what it looked like for you?
Gosh. So hit by the truck at Grady for 10 days, got myself discharged. This is when you have to start being your own advocate immediately. Grady is a great place to save your life and put you back together, but that's where all the bad bugs are. So get out of there as fast as you can. Having worked in the Grady healthcare system, I knew this. So I discharged myself to the Emory rehab unit. Got there, was non-weight bearing on everything except my left hand because I had broken clavicles. I had my pelvis was broken. Non-weight bearing on that leg. My right arm was broken in 16 places, so I couldn't do anything really but lay in the bed. My first day there, first night, I got there at like 6:30 in the evening. And as I was laying in the bed, I could hear them talking outside my door, the physical therapist, the PMR doc, and the nurse saying, what are we going to do with her? She can't do anything. And I said very loudly, hey, I can hear you. And you're going to be really surprised at what I can do, thinking I'll just do what they tell me and, I'll be fine. I had no idea that I was so weak, I could not even lift my leg off the bed. So they were right. I really couldn't do anything, but my determination and my self-drive was enough to get me going and keep me going. I was in their rehab unit for 9.5 weeks. I think I still hold the record for the longest orthopedic stay. I know I did 2 years ago, so I think I still do. When I left there, I was still non-weight bearing on everything but one hand. But with that one arm, I was strong enough to pull myself into a chair, transfer to use the bathroom, transfer back into the bed, transfer all of that using a sliding board. I had to have somebody stay with me 24/7. Luckily, I have 5 brothers and sisters, so they each took a night, and then I had a friend who would stay. And then when school started back, I sent my youngest to college by himself, didn't get to take him or anything, which was really hard. But my other son had to leave college and come home and take care of me. And having a 19-year-old boy take care of you, I'm going to tell you, we're still friends, but that was hard. I know it was hard on him. It was hard on me, but just the normal mom things, like he didn't know how to clean the bathroom properly. I mean, I had taught him how to do that, but I would say, hey, we need to do this. And he would do it. And I would roll in there and think, oh my Lord, what did you do? Did you wipe the toilet or, So we lived together like that for about 6 or 7 months before I was able to really do any of those house things. After about 4 months, I was able to weight bear on my one leg. And then once I was able to do that, I was able to go and start working on a prosthetic, got the prosthetic, and then started on walking. It was almost a full year from the time of the accident before I got a leg. And then it was almost another full year before I could walk without any assistive device. So 2 years of just going at it.
And remind me, did you land at Atlanta Prosthetics and Orthotics right away, or how did you find, and for our listeners, this was an organization that Jason worked at in the beginning of his career, and that's how Julie and I know each other.
So when I was at the rehab center, I had several different prosthetic companies come in there. And I had done enough research at that point that I knew that I wanted a suction fit socket and the computer knees had just come out. And of course, I felt like I needed one because
you are Julie Strickland.
Everybody wants the best. I was going to drive the Cadillac first, Yeah. But three companies came out, and at least I'm glad 3 came out because that made me realize that I could go with more than one place because I didn't understand the whole process at this point. The first person told me, no, that's not what you need. You need XYZ. And then the next person told me that that would not be possible because I had a huge invaginated scar up the back of my leg. So when I left, I had no prosthetic company to work with. Ironically, Jim Hughes also has boys, and his son played on the same baseball team as my son. I had no idea he made legs. I mean, because you don't talk about what you do at work when you're at a baseball game. And one of the other parents called me and said, you need to talk to Jim Hughes. And I said, why do I need to talk to Jim Hughes? Yeah, and they told me. And so he came to my house and he looked. And I told him what I wanted. And he said, well, we'll try. That was the only encouragement I had heard. So I was like, yes. Of course, later he told me, when I told him all that, he thought, there is no way that's ever going to work on this girl's leg. But, at least he said he would try. And so that is the reason I went with them, was because he was willing to try.
Yeah. No, I know we can't puff Jim up too much. He can't handle it. If he's listening, we
That's
love you
right.
so very much. Jim Hughes, he is actually who trained Jason. And I hope you know this, is that one of the reasons Jason, when he's with patients, says we'll try or we want to do it is because Jim taught him that really you're here to serve patients. And so you got to meet them where they are. And if they want a suction socket, you try to make it work if it's medically appropriate. But
Right.
yeah. Wow, that's awesome. So figuring out that you were going to walk, you wanted to get back to running. Why don't you tell our listeners, how did you get your first running leg?
Well, I've never had a running leg.
Okay.
Never. I had to fundraise my first leg. My insurance company said I would never be a viable walker, so they paid for a fantastic wheelchair. I've got top of the line highlight chair that I can break down and put in my car and all that stuff. So the first leg that they paid for was just a basic 4-bar safety knee. And Jim kept telling me, you can do the other legs, you can do them, you can do them. But then I was walking with that. And so the running community in Georgia put together a 5K race, and we raised $53,000 in one day to pay for my leg, which was amazing, to get a C leg, which is the Autobot computer leg. And at that time, it was thought that you could run in it. They were brand new. We didn't know what the limits were. I then contacted Bob Gailey and talked with him, met with him at an Amputee Coalition national meeting and told him about Atlanta, Georgia, and how we had all these amputees. I didn't know who they were yet, but I was sure that they were out there who wanted to learn to run. Told him about Warm Springs, told him to look into that facility, and I thought that we could get some people down there. And that happened. He looked at Warm Springs, did a running clinic. It was one of the very first clinics that he ever did. Now he does them all the time.
Yep.
And I got 4 amputees to come with me, and he found 3 others from around the country to fly in. So we had 7 people at that first running clinic to learn how to run. And I did learn. I learned that it hurt the rest of my body and that I looked like the Michelin tire man going down the track. And I just thought, that is not pretty. But I can get out of the next truck that's going to hit me, out of the way. I can do that.
So, Julie, to kind of transition, everything you told us is you advocated for yourself, and then you had other people involved. Why don't you talk about becoming a peer visitor? What led you to decide, from all the tragedy you had walked through, to say, I want to help the next person?
So, when I look back, I've always done this, just didn't realize that I was doing it. When I was a new mom, I was breastfeeding. I started a La Leche League branch in Lawrenceville, Georgia, for other breastfeeding moms to come and talk and do. So with this, I was experiencing it. I understood it. So I did that. I contacted the Amputee Coalition, started going to their national meetings, and got trained to be a peer visitor, certified peer visitor with them. The training was about a 4-hour training, and it was good. It was good. About 3 years later, I went back to them. We rewrote the training because there were things that weren't being covered that needed to be covered that you would see in real life. The original training was written by 2-legged people. So, I mean, while they can empathize and they can talk to people and try to understand, it's very different to be in our heads and see that. So about 8 amputees, we got together and we rewrote the program, and that's the current program that they're using.
What was one of the big things that you thought this needs to be touched on?
One of the biggest things that they had was they didn't do any role playing. And that's important because you are flying by the seat of your pants every time you go into that peer visit. And you need to throw as many things at these people in the beginning when they're in a controlled environment to see how they think on their feet and how they're going to do. One of the things that is very surprising to people when they start doing this peer visiting is it takes you emotionally back to that same time in your life. So they can be emotionally draining. I've had peer visitors cry at their peer visit because it brought on all these emotions that they had forgotten about or not thought about in years. So you need to have that. You also need to throw at them the person who really doesn't want you to be there, the angry person, the person who is so overly confident that you have to make them have realistic expectations. I mean, all these things that can happen in a peer visit that you don't necessarily think about. You think you're going to go in there and talk to them about getting a leg, and they end up talking about something completely different.
Yeah. And your desire to jump in, I know you have an advocacy wing in your personality. You are just somebody who cares so deeply for others. Did anyone do this for you?
So when I was, well, first of all, in my previous life, I managed a 13 subspecialty medical clinic, pediatric clinic, and one of the subspecialties was pediatric oncology. So I saw kids come in with osteosarcomas and lose their legs, and in 6 weeks they were running around the clinic on their legs. So in my head, I thought, well, this is not hard. You just get a leg and walk. That's what I thought. I had 2 people come in and visit me, both very well-meaning. One was sent because she went to church with somebody who knew me.
Right.
This person came in to my room. I'm 40 years old, very active, and she came in a wheelchair without a leg on. And while that's okay, that did not give me a visual of what's possible. And her life was very different from mine. She lived in a chair, and that was and that's okay for somebody who wants to do that, but that was not what I wanted. So her peer visit with me was telling me how to do everything from a wheelchair and how easy it is. And so I listened to her, and when she left, I thought, well, I'm not doing that,
Right.
But if I had not been the person I am, I would have thought that was the reality.
Right.
The next person who came in to see me was a bilateral AK, so both legs missing above the knee. Oh, that's a total different thing than what I have. And he was walking on stubbies. So at least he showed me that walking is possible. But again, it wasn't a good fit for me personally. So that was the only 2 people, adults, that I had ever met with limb loss. So when I got out of the rehab and once I started working with this, I thought, this is crazy because everybody should have a visit with somebody who is like them in as many ways as possible. So, losing your leg the same way, the same level of amputation, women with women, men with men, activity, whether you have diabetes or not, whether you have vascular disease, whether you've, there's just so many
trauma
things.
Even.
Trauma, because while the emotional part of it is the same for everybody follows that same kind of progress, and it's a grieving process. How you got there and how you deal with it are completely different. If you are someone who's very active, you want to talk to somebody about who's very active, who tells them, okay, this is, this is how I did it, A, B, C, D. Whereas if you have somebody who's 75 and really is just going to be using this to transfer from the bed to a chair or, as a pivot point, you don't want a 30-year-old Paralympian coming in there and talking to them about walking, because it's part of it is managing realistic expectations.
Yeah, no, that's so wise. And I think your rewrite really helped people navigate that mental space. As you've gone through the peer visit, I lovingly want to call you the OG of peer visitors. As the OG, and you're seeing the shifts in peer visitor, what do you think patients back then and even now still need to hear today?
I think what we're missing in peer visiting now, I think it's the managing of realistic expectation. I know that I see these people come up now through the program and even people who I have trained, and they get so encouraging. And I don't mean that in a bad way, but so encouraging that they're almost like cheerleaders on the sideline. And that's not what we need to be. I mean, we do need to encourage, but we also need to be that person who says, yeah, that's hard. That was really hard. Instead of saying, you got this. or, if you let's just work harder, because sometimes it doesn't matter if you work harder. You are at your level of where you're going to be. And I think that's something that's missed in some of the people coming up now.
And so in your counseling sessions, and I know you host support groups and you meet with so many people, how do you manage expectations? What are some things that if someone's listening today and they're kind of in that middle of, this is really hard, what would you say to them?
Well, I mean, it's hard to tell somebody something without knowing them and meeting with them and understanding where they are. I'll give you some examples. I have a gentleman who comes to my support group in Lawrenceville. He's been coming for 3 years. He's above the knee. He has other medical conditions going on. And every meeting, every month, he says, I just don't understand why I can't walk without a walker. And every meeting I tell him, I said, well, because you're dealing with other things. And the fact that you are in a walker is amazing.
Yeah.
You're not in the chair. The chair is probably going to be something that you're going to have to go to at some point in the future because of your other conditions. But right now, you're killing it. But what happens to the amputee in their brain, they feel like they're not being a good amputee because they're not doing what they see other people doing, and people judge. Well, I saw on Dancing with the Stars, yada, yada, yada. And, and I'm thinking, this poor guy, I mean, he is doing absolutely the best he can. And it's amazing knowing what he's got going on, that he's doing as well as he is, but that he feels less than. And so that's the piece that's tough.
It is. And I know this is not in our notes, but I had a thought while you're talking. I know the role of technology has been very helpful for finding information for amputees, but also there's a downside to it. And I thought maybe you could touch on that of, thinking that this device might be good for you when you don't have that same style of amputation, or you might have other issues going on. Do you feel confident you could talk about a little bit about how the internet is a double-edged sword?
I tell everybody to just stay off of it, because what they don't realize is the people that they are looking at, 9 times out of 10, they were born that way. Or they lost their legs as children. So, of course, they're going to do all these great things. It's not to say that when we lose our legs at 40, 50, 60, 70, that we don't go on to do great things, but that is the exception, not the rule. After my accident, I had all my friends in the running community sending me videos of amputees running. I mean, daily sending me videos. And, I know they were trying to be encouraging, but that was horrible to have to watch. It made me cry, because I would think, oh my God, it's going to be so hard, or whatever. I started calling them the well-meaning meanies because they were being mean. They didn't know it.
Right.
And the same thing when people say, why don't you, whatever it is, why don't you walk with just a cane? Or why don't you, it's not that we don't want to, it's that we're not there yet. We may never be there. So when you see these things, and, we see more amputees on TV, yay, I'm glad. But again, it's not your average amputee who has diabetes and vascular disease and lost their leg at 68 years old.
Right. And so if you're caring for somebody in that season, what are some things that you've seen done really well? What are some things people can do that are more positive, that across the board, hey, I got a loved one who's walking through this. What would you suggest?
Well, the first thing I want to say is that as an amputee, in our head, we think we're going to be okay. We are, most of us are in a positive state of mind, and we're going to get there. We can't see what we look like. We think that we're doing everything really good. And I know that we're not. I've seen videos of myself. I know. The people who care, your caregivers, your loved ones, they are in absolutely the worst seat for this whole scenario, because when you're watching someone you love struggle, and we are struggling, we don't know it, we don't realize it, but we are struggling. That is the hardest thing in the world to do. I mean, that's heartbreaking. And then to not really know what to do, and anything that you do, usually the amputee snaps at you because it takes 110% of everything we've got every day just to get through the day, both mentally, emotionally, and physically. So we are exhausted. It's just a very tough road for about a year. Let the amputee lead with what they need. Let them ask for help. Don't automatically help, because we know what we can and can't do generally. Losing independence is the very worst thing that happens until you get your independence back. So, for example, for me, when I first lost my leg, or once I was up and kind of doing, I could either be on a walker or in a wheelchair. Everything is a tool. When you're on a walker, you can't carry anything. So the chair is a good tool if you're wanting to get your cup of coffee and, go to the table. And so encouraging people to do what they can using the tools that they have available, and not making people think, or not thinking yourself, that if you're not on the walker all the time or on the crutches all the time, that you're not being a good amputee if you're using the chair for things, because everything has its purpose. Another example, I was in the wheelchair using my grab tool, doing laundry. So I was reaching down into the washing machine, pulling one piece of laundry out and putting it in the dryer, and one piece of, and my sister came over to help me that day. She was coming to visit, and she came in, she said, "Oh, let me do that." Grabbed the back of my wheelchair and just wheeled me out of the way and got all that stuff and put it in there. It made me so mad. I couldn't see straight. And I was like, "Look, unless you're going to come do my laundry every day, I need to do this." So yes, we take longer. Yes, we struggle. Yes, if you did it, it would be quicker and faster, but we have to make those strides to get to where you want us to be. So let them struggle. I know it's hard.
Yeah, no, I think that's really positive what you're sharing. I'm thinking about one of the things you said, and a previous guest mentioned this, is to be mindful of how long things take, and maybe talking about the unseen weight of the time management. So for an able-bodied person, typically to get dressed or to go and do anything, you backtrack as an amputee of how long things start to take, and it's new. You're starting to learn how much longer. Why don't you talk on managing that, and then maybe managing expectations for the rest of the world, knowing that we might not understand that.
So, time management, originally, when I had two legs, I could get up, get a shower, blow my hair dry, get my makeup on, get dressed, and be out the door in about 45 minutes.
That's impressive.
The first time I tried to get up and put my leg on, it took me 45 minutes only to get the leg on, and then it was crooked, and I had to start all over. So it takes tremendous amount of time, and you cannot hurry. There is no hurry. It's physically impossible to hurry. Even now, 23 years out, it takes me about an hour and that's not with showering and doing my hair. That's just basically getting up, getting dressed, having a cup of coffee, and getting out the door, just because I'm slower. So I'm older, but I'm slower. And that's really hard to learn.
And when you are talking to fellow amputees, how do you encourage them to plan? If you're an amputee listening, and I know you can't tell the whole world how to live their life. I mean, you and I both would be glad to tell the whole world how to live their life because we're bosses. But in the end, how can we encourage people to see the beauty in the season that they've been given?
Yeah. I think that the first thing is to realistically time how long it takes you.
Yeah.
I mean, I know now how long it takes me, and it will change. You will get faster, but 2 hours is not unrealistic.
Yeah.
2 hours.
Think about that. And then caregivers to kind of think about padding time for 2 hours. Now I want to transition to the next thought that you shared earlier, where you talked about your sister, and I know she meant well. She just wanted to help you. How important it is to have purpose. And what you're talking about is you wanted to do your own laundry because you wanted to have purpose. Our Gold Digger program, how important it is to us. And we believe that everybody can set and achieve mobility goals Talk about that for you and what you've seen. Maybe share some stories of people and why that's so important to overall healthcare and that mental health side.
Amputation, you go through the stages of grief, and the last stage of grief is acceptance. And acceptance is that it is what it is. I am this way, and this is the way it's going to be. Well, the last stage for us as amputees is thriving. That's what I tell people, thriving. And everybody doesn't get there, but hopefully they will. And so it's finding your ability or what you want to do. I mean, for some people, thriving is being able to live alone. Yeah. For some people, it's being able to, get to their car and drive. But the thriving part is the top, where you want to be. And that's purpose as well. Thriving is purpose.
What are some easy +1 is what we like to say goals early on that you would recommend for a patient to start putting their eyes on? A lot of times we were talking earlier about they see other amputees doing all this stuff. Where could you start?
So what I tell amputees when I'm talking with them or working with them is journaling is a great thing. Not journaling your feelings. I mean, that's good too. That's not what I do, but that's good. When I was in the rehab center, because I was so goal driven, my physical therapist said, start journaling about what you did today. So you can look, because it seems like such a long, slow process. So my journaling started with, today I lifted my foot off the bed 2 times. And a week later, I could do it 5 times. I'll tell amputees to do the same thing. Today, I used the walker 3 times. Or today, I stood during I was able to stand during the entire commercial. Just setting little goals that are achievable, but that also help with their physical therapy. Today, I walked 4 steps. And you'll see it grow, because if you're just thinking about it and it seems like, oh my gosh, I've been going to physical therapy for 3 weeks and I can't even walk to the bathroom yet. That may be true. But if you can only walk 3 steps the first day before you just sit down and now you're walking 12 steps, you're making progress.
Yeah.
So, I mean, I start teeny tiny goals, because once you start seeing the progress, then it builds momentum and you get going. But if you're feeling like I'm just not getting anywhere, you give up. And when the truth is, they probably are getting somewhere. It's just that the increments are so small that they don't realize it.
No, so true. And such a positive way to look at things, and building with the end in mind, knowing if your goal is to go to the bathroom, how many steps is it to the bathroom, and making that incremental progress. So that way, when you do get to the bathroom, it took you 27 steps and it took you 9 days to get there. Yeah. And how we celebrate those wins. I think you do that so well with our patient population, and you've connected me with so many people already. And I'm somebody who learned everything over the kitchen table, so I didn't know all the things. But one thing you've been so good at is advocating for yourself and knowing your resources. I thought maybe you could jump in and talk about, even when you were walking in, you said, some people might not even know all the things that are available to them. Talk about how you know and what you've done to make sure you get the care that you need.
Being a self-advocate is very important, but if you don't know, there are lots of places to find information. Amputee Coalition is one of them. Your prosthetist is one. Your physical therapist is another, just to build your team, and that's what's important. One of the things that I tell new amputees when they're getting ready to start for their physical therapy, I said, make sure you're seeing a physical therapist who has worked with amputees before, and someone with your level of amputation. Because realistically, when you're in school, the physical therapist gets about a 3-hour course without any live interaction with amputees. It's just a book knowledge. And that's good, but it's better if you have somebody who's actually worked with them. They understand a prosthetic. They understand what's an attainable goal and what's not. As an example, I had recently had knee replacement surgery, and when I was in the recovery room, the person came in and said, well, put your leg on and stand up and walk. And I said, well, I have to stand on that leg, they thought I could just put my leg on while laying in the bed, like it would just like snap on like Mr. Potato Head or something, and stand up, and it would walk for me, that my prosthetic walked for me. This was a physical therapist who just didn't know, not that he was not a good physical therapist. I'm sure he was, but he probably only had that 3 hours of physical therapy stuff from, 10 years ago when he was in school, and just didn't have any idea.
Yeah. And how important it is to make sure people that you have on your team are listening to you. So, Julie, I was wondering if you could talk about how you knew you were in the right place. I know you mentioned earlier with Jim, he said he was willing to try. I know you've had different prosthetists, you and your family have moved and have had different seasons. You've had to build care teams a few times.
Yeah. I am not an easy client or patient, however you want to word it.
Every prosthetist listening knows.
Those of you out there who've built a leg for me,
she'd like to thank you now.
That's right. You just learn. I'll give anybody a shot, and I have, giving lots of people opportunities to learn. But I'm not afraid to say, this isn't working, and I'm going to go somewhere else. And generally, when I get to that place with a prosthetist, they're thinking the same thing in their head. They just don't want to say it. And I've remained friends with everybody who I've ever worked with in that capacity, who's done that. Same thing with physical therapists. I always ask, how many amputees have you worked with? How many above knee amputees have you worked with? How many of them are very active? And I don't expect big numbers, because they're not going to be big numbers, but I expect honest answers. And you can tell pretty quickly if they've not been honest. And I mean, maybe they said, oh yeah, I've worked with above knee amputees before, but then I realize that they're asking me to do things that my leg is not capable of doing. So I educate them as well, but I will move on if don't feel like I'm getting what I need. I think early on, as a new amputee, you just don't know that, but that's where support group comes in, because you can come to the support group and say, well, and we don't use names, my physical therapist said XYZ, and not just me, but maybe somebody else in the group will say, well, your knee won't do that, or, that's not a realistic expectation as a below the knee, or, things like that. I can't squat because my sleeve gets in the way. And my physical therapist is saying I just need to squat more. Well, no, that sleeve's always going to get in the way. So it's that kind of thing. So you can get knowledge there, and, we can help you talk to your physical therapist, or have the prosthetist talk to your physical therapist to help educate them, because that's all it is. It's just an education thing. It's not that they're good or bad. It's that they don't know.
And I think that's the beauty of what you, and there's a couple other people in our community that do so generously, is you don't look down on them for not knowing that. It is a very small population that we're dealing with, and getting people the education. One thing I love about where we live is people are hungry for it. We hosted a PT event, and it was so widely attended, and we're so grateful for all the PTs who came and wanted to learn more about serving this patient population. Julie was one of the first people I came to when I said, hey, I really want to get this new legislation done in our state. I think it's so important. And if you can't tell, Julie will tell you what she thinks. And I love that about her. And she told me some of the things that I needed to do. And the first thing she said to me is, you have to educate everybody. Most people don't know about our patient population. And I'm not a member of this club, but I love this club very much and wanted to make sure they have access to the things they need. What would you say to the therapist or prosthetist or caregiver that is eager to want to learn more, but doesn't know where to start?
The easiest thing, if you're the physical therapist, call their prosthetist. That prosthetist is going to love to talk to you about what their prosthesis will and will not do. They are eager to share that with you as the physical therapist. Same thing as the prosthetist. If you're seeing somebody and they're saying, my physical therapist is saying, XYZ, call the physical therapist. You have to have a team effort. You have to know what each other is doing. And that, to me, is just the very basic easiest thing to do is just to communicate with the other people on the team.
Yeah,
that really is.
I think that's great advice. It reminds me of our amputee clinics and why it's so important to have people in the same room at the same time. And the other dirty word is documentation. And so knowing, if you would be willing to talk about kind of the barrier to entry with insurance companies. I mean, you've battled it. What is so important for amputees and their loved ones to know concerning insurance and advocating for themselves with their physician?
Wow. I talk a lot about this with new amputees. The very first thing to know is that your prosthesis falls under DME, which is durable medical equipment. And every policy is different. Doesn't matter if you have $1 million medical coverage, that will not go towards getting a leg. My first policy that I had had I think a $20,000 cap for DME, which, if you think about it, when you think about durable medical equipment, you're thinking wheelchairs, walkers, that sounds like a humongous amount of money for that kind of stuff, but not realizing that your prosthetics fall under there too, and a above knee prosthetic with a microprocessor knee could run you $50,000.
Yeah. So when your team raised $53,000, I want the audience to know that barely covered.
That barely covered.
Yeah.
So just knowing that that's what you need to look at, number one. Number two, as you get back up and walking and you go back to work, or if you're looking for a job, you need to look at insurance coverages at those places you're looking to work for. I know that it sounds sad that you choose a job based on your insurance. I've done it. Most amputees do that. They're looking at that coverage because you're going to need a new leg. You're going to need a lot of stuff. And you don't want to be stuck with one of these crazy policies, one leg per lifetime or one $5,000 a year or whatever. So knowing that that's where you look, because nobody knows that. Even physicians don't know that, because I was told, you've got great medical coverage, you won't have any problem with a leg, by my doctor, who did not know that it was under DME.
No, and that's the work that we did down at the Capitol this past year is, and I say this all the time to the advocates that were with us. So when we showed up for our Capitol Day, every person there lived with limb loss or limb difference. When I walked down to the Capitol without living that experience, every person at the Capitol asked me, how much is it going to cost? And every person who has limb loss and limb difference asked me, where's the elevator? We're not even asking the same questions. It's just something that I think the education portion, which you've always encouraged me to do, is to open the door for people to share their stories and why it's so important that we in Georgia got this legislation passed and that we're able to, in 2026, have secondary devices. Now, the thing that people don't know is that every policy is different and we don't have insurance fairness. So it's not going to be everybody is going to get it, but it's the right step in the right direction for sure.
Yeah, it's a step in the right direction. Ultimately, the goal should be that these prosthetics fall under your medical. Just like if you have a hip replacement, that is a prosthetic. Why is it more important or higher level? Because it's inside your body, that it's a greater value than outside your body to help you walk. And that's the ultimate goal.
Oh, yeah. Don't worry, Julie. I'm not done.
That's the ultimate goal.
I'm not done. Watch out, Georgia. We're working on it. And maybe one day federally we'll have a change in policy. As you know, we're all rooting for the Olympics in 2028, and we all want to see our athletes, but also all of the patients living with limb loss and limb difference to have what they need. And that's where I wanted to transition, is why it's so important to have these devices and to have actionable steps, because you said it gives you purpose after an accident. And not everybody's built like steel, like you, who has this desire to clean a bathroom and wants to have things put together. But would you be willing to talk about why having access to mobility has been so important for you personally?
So as a runner, I ran 5 to 10 miles a day. I ran over 500 5K, 10K races in the state of Georgia. I was part of the Run and See Georgia series. I ran multiple marathons and even more half marathons. So movement was important. That feeling of accomplishment and that feeling you get when you finish running is just the most wonderful thing ever. Never had it since. I've tried to do it in many, many ways, but it's just a different thing. So being able to try to do other things to try to get that feeling of independence is important. I've done rowing. I rode with amputees across America. I rode a bike from Colorado to St. Louis. Well, that was kind of crazy, but I did that. But yeah, all these things that are movement that can get you going and doing. I've done everything trying to find that feeling again. I've never found it, but I have learned new skills and new things to do that enable me to sleep better, feel better, just the whole thing of being mobile. I mean, God didn't make us to sit all the time. And when we sit a lot, bad things happen in our body. So it's important to be able to get up and do that, however that is, and whatever that is for whoever is trying to get up and go.
That's so helpful to think about it when we are working towards the ultimate goal of getting patients access to devices. It's really to not sit, to not live a sedentary lifestyle, to get back into society. I was thinking maybe you could share a couple stories without violating HIPAA and encourage our audience of people, because you have had front row seat to so many stories that would inspire, not in the bad way that you taught us not to do that sort of stuff, but for somebody who might not have a peer visitor, because there's not enough peer visitors to go around. We need more, but they need a little encouragement to know that there's hope out there.
So the good thing is you can start at any time, at any place where you are. I have someone who I worked with. They had been an amputee for many years, close to 10 years. And in that time, they had received a leg, but the leg just kind of sat in the corner because it hurt or it didn't feel good, and they didn't get physical therapy for whatever reason. And so I started working with them and talking with them and talking about the baby steps to get there. You have to put it on. You have to make that decision. And I don't care if you just put it on and sit on your couch all day. Just put it on. You have to integrate it into yourself. And so this person did, and we slowly started working back and got her back with some physical therapy, worked and worked and worked. And after about 8 months, she was able to do some walking in the walker. And then after a little bit longer, she got better, and we started doing other things. I would go to the grocery store with her, and we would push the cart. I would show her, just sometimes it's just having someone else there to say, you can do this. You don't have to ride in the cart. You can push the cart, kind of thing. Doing that. I had another person. She was a teenager when she lost her leg. Very high level. Worked with her for a while, and then kind of lost touch. Then she called me back. By then she was a 20-year-old and gained a lot of weight, not being very active. And she asked me, did I ever go to the store and shop for clothes? And I was like, yeah, I go to the store and shop for clothes. I mean, yeah. So she asked me would I go with her, because she didn't know how to try on clothes with her leg. So we went. We each got clothes. We went into the handicap room together, and I showed her how I did what I did. We had very similar leg setups, and so it was very easy to do. In 4 years, she had never gone clothes shopping because she didn't know exactly how to do it, to try them on. She was just, ordering everything online. Same person, about 6 years later, she's getting married. She's very nervous about that, walking down the aisle because she still uses an assistive device, a cane. And I was like, well, I don't, decorate the cane. I don't know. I mean, to me, that's not a big thing, and so, she did. She calls me 2 years later. She's pregnant. How do I do this? How do I wear a leg when I'm pregnant? What do I need to do? Well, I've never been pregnant as an amputee, goodness, but gave her the name of someone else who I knew had gone through pregnancy as a young mom and how she did and hooked them up so that she had a resource to talk to, about how to do and what to do and how did you get up in the middle of the night. I mean, all those things that you just don't think about.
Right.
Unless you don't have a leg and you can't just jump up and get the baby. And so, that was an ongoing process. And to this day, I still have contact with her. She'll call me about different things that she's, there's always the first, always.
And it's so nice that you have a network that you can help people. And I know you're not a man, so you have a whole Rolodex of guys that when they need help with guy things, you are pointing them in the right direction. And tell me and tell our listeners, if somebody wants to build, and I say Rolodex for our Gen Z people, they might not know what it is, but it sat on your desk and you would like roll it around. But you created a community. How could somebody start that? What are some things that you did to make sure you had a community of people? I know you don't bully people, but you make people be your friend. I know that about you.
So in 23 years, I have probably visited, gosh, I don't know, probably 200, 250 new amputees in that amount of time, which sounds like a lot, but it's really not over the years. And when I first see somebody, I ask them, I said, look, I'm doing this for you. Would you want to do this sometime in the future? I take their name and number and I tell them, I'm going to call on you to give back because that's what this is about. And so I just keep people all the time. I just did this the other day for a gentleman who needed to talk to another gentleman, called that guy. I said, hey, and he's like, wow, you haven't called me in 5 years. I said, well, you didn't match for 5 years, but this is the perfect match for you. And, and so that's what I do. I
think I shouldn't call you a peer visitor. You're a matchmaker, Julie.
Well, in some cases.
Yeah. So your matchmaking skills, tell our listeners if they want to match, what do they need to do?
So you can get my name and information.
Yep. We'll link it in the description box. Our amazing producer, Lane Johnson's going to make sure all of her good stuff is on this little link and description box.
And so if you want someone to talk to, even if you're not a new amputee, but if you're struggling with, how do you get in and out of the bathtub? I mean, that's the kind of things that we do. We don't want anybody to have to reinvent the wheel. We'll help you, tell you how we do it. Maybe that sparks something in your brain that says, oh, well, I can't do that, but I could do this. That's the whole purpose. It's an amputee resource group is what it is. It's not a support group. It's a resource group. So if you're looking for someone like you, whatever your situation, I probably have someone who will match you. I even have an amputee who lost his leg to a propeller in an airplane. So as crazy as that sounds, it happens. I can match you pretty well with anything that you've got going on. And that can, help you get to whatever level you want to be. On the flip side, if you want to do this, I would encourage you to go to support groups because that's what we do in there. New amputees come in all the time and all they're looking for is some advice, gives you the opportunity. I facilitate the group, but I don't tell everybody what to do. I'm an above the knee. It's very rare that I tell a below the knee how to do their stuff. Occasionally I may offer some advice, but if you're below the knee and you've been doing this for 10 years and you've learned all the tricks of the trade, it's really nice to be able to tell the newbies what to do. So the first step is to get involved in a support group.
No, so important. I know Alliance has always tried to encourage, there's this amazing support group. And if you're in the Northeast Georgia area, it's in Lawrenceville. It's hosted in a neutral site. Just for our listeners to know, O&P companies, typically, we try not to have them in our facilities because everybody goes to different places. And we believe it's kind of like Baskin Robbins. There's 31 flavors. There's not 31 O&P clinics. I'll tell you right now, there's fewer of those, but there's a flavor for everybody. And so I've noticed in my interim of 9 years in the O&P space, how people find the right prosthetist, similar to the way that you're talking about matching with a peer. You do a really good job with that of knowing all the clinicians in the area who might be a good fit. And you don't directly say, go here all the time. I mean,
no,
that's not
no.
in the rules. That's outside the rules. However, if someone is struggling with their prosthetist right now, what could they do to find someone? And I know Jason talked about this in an earlier podcast, but interviewing and kind of going through that.
Yeah. So the first thing that I tell you, if you're having trouble with your prosthetist, I tell you to see somebody else in that practice. Because generally, I mean, I can tell you from my experience, there are people who make above knee prosthetics better than they make below knee, and below knee better than they make above knee, just because that's what they get more of. It's just kind of the way it is. And you may not be with the right person in that practice and not even know. So I always encourage you to see somebody else in the practice to see if they can help you in some way first. If you're still not satisfied with how the leg is or what's going on, that's when you start interviewing. I mean, I tell people all the time that, first of all, it doesn't cost anything to interview somebody. There should not be a charge. If there's a charge, then that's not where you want to go. And, it has to be somebody that you feel is listening to you and that you trust. Talk to their patients. They'll give you the names of their patients to talk to. In my support group, I can tell you that every meeting I have at least 4 different prosthetists represented every time. And, that's the way we do. If I'm seeing you as a new amputee, I give you a list of everybody in the area, and I tell you, please interview these people, go and talk to them. If it's a woman, I tell them it's like picking your OBGYN doctor or your pediatrician. It's that important. I don't know what men do to pick important things, but I know for women, that's the 2 important things you do.
Yeah. Well, if you talk to the gentleman's wife, then maybe you can use that. But I know in the past, what we've experienced with our patients is finding the right match and finding the right cadence to meet. One thing, and maybe you can talk to this, is how regularly you visit your prosthetist and how important it is to build that rapport.
Yes. So, in the beginning, you see them really regularly, but this is a lifetime commitment. That's why I say it's like your pediatrician or your
spouse.
I mean, it really is. And I mean, I've had amputees come in and just cry because their person retired or their person moved. I mean, it is a devastating loss if it's somebody that you really like. It really is. It's like a divorce. It is that close and that intimate. And so you really need somebody that you click with.
Yeah. No, I think that's such good advice. And, it's such a small community. We all kind of know each other in some capacity. And I teasingly say it's like Kevin Bacon. Everybody's like 1 to 2 degrees from Kevin Bacon in some way. In the O&P community, one thing Jason and I have always felt is professional courtesy. So no one is going to be upset with you if you end up leaving because you need to find a place that you click better. It's better to have that conversation up front. What about advocating for yourself if you're leaving a practice or wanting to start a new place, like medical records and all the things that you and I kind of know about, but if you're not in this space, you might not know.
Yeah. So when you leave one practice, it is good to get your notes from that prosthetist, because unless you are, I can't even tell you every knee that I've worn or stuff like that. And I don't expect amputees to know that. I mean, that's just not their thing. But if you get all the notes from the prosthetist and you bring them to the next prosthetist, they can say or see, well, I see that they've tried XYZ, maybe this is a good fit, instead of, again, trying to reinvent the wheel. And sometimes it's just a matter of the time that has gone by. I know that in the beginning, when the first seal-in liners came out, I wore one for a couple of weeks because I wanted to know what it felt like so I could talk intelligently to other amputees. But even those have made dramatic changes in the last 15 years. And if it didn't work 15 years ago, that doesn't mean it won't work now because of changes. And if you go in and you say, oh, I tried a seal-in liner and it didn't work, and the prosthetist may be thinking that you tried it in the last 2 years and it didn't work, so yeah, maybe it won't. But if you didn't try it for 10 years, there's been changes. So it's important for them to know everything that you had and done, and you can get that from your prosthetist. The same thing as far as medically. If you've got pins or staples or anything like that holding you together because of a traumatic injury, that's important for them to know where you are weight bearing on your prosthesis. If there's a big screw there and they don't know, I mean, it's not like they can feel it, then an x-ray will show that if you can bring your x-rays.
That's so helpful, and a great way to kind of transition to our closing, which is you and I agree that there are enough great areas to be treated in this Northeast Georgia area. Just like matchmaking with prosthetists and matchmaking with peer visitors and matchmaking with physical therapists, you have a unique view of how everybody can find what they need. Would you give just an encouraging thought at the close of our podcast of what you would hope your community that you've been so passionately serving for so many years would hear from you?
I think that no matter what, everybody can make some improvements.
Yeah.
For me, I mean, I was told I would not walk, but I do. To have the person to help to encourage you in a realistic way is out there. To find the prosthetist to make the necessary adjustments to the things that you have or get you the things that you need, they are out there. The physical therapist is out there. It may take some time to find them, but once you put everything together, it really becomes like the perfect world. It took me years to get that, but it was, one person saying, what about this? Another person saying, how about trying this? You're in this for the long haul. There's no immediate gratification.
Oh man, that's too bad. Thank you for saying that. And also I just wanted to say thank you for not giving up. I think one of the gifts you give our community is tenacity, and that you have not quit. And so thank you, Julie, for sharing that tenacity with our community.
You're welcome. I had in a review one time, my manager said that I was just tenacious, and I thought that was a compliment.
Well, at this company it is.
That's right. And then I learned.
Thank you so much for joining us today,
Thanks.
Julie.
Thanks for having me.
Were you inspired or challenged today? If so, connect with us. Follow the links in the description box below. We want to hear from you. Until next time, thanks for listening to the Alliance Goal Digger podcast.